We're going to be solving absolute value inequalities, and we're going to be looking at fairly difficult problems right now. The first one that we're going to look at is an OR statement. And the reason that we know it's OR is we're going to see that the absolute value is greater than 2. Now, in order to get to this step right here, what we're going to do specifically today is work on everything outside of the absolute value. So we're going to solve this like a normal equation in the sense of our variable is the absolute value. So we're trying to get this absolute value by itself. So our first step is subtracting the 9. And when we subtract it from 5, we get -4. Then we divide it by -2. Now, when we divide each side by -2, notice that this is a less than statement, but whenever we divide by a negative, it flips the inequality, so now it's a greater than. So that brings us to our compound inequality, which is an OR statement. Now, once we have the OR statement, we can write our two equations, one where the root is positive and one where the root is negative. Now, remember, when you have a negative root, you're flipping the inequality. So it's no longer greater than, it's less than, because we're changing the value of the inequality. We add the 1 to get 3. We add the 1 to get -1. OR statements are always going opposite directions. We always put our least number first and our greatest number second. Now, when we're writing our interval, it's going to -infinity, it's going to +infinity. -infinity to 1, -1, and then 3 to infinity. And that's how we're writing in an interval notation. So we're going to be doing three things: solving it, graphing it, writing it in an interval notation. So looking at example 1, our first step is we're going to add the 3. And we get 5, absolute value of x minus 1 is less than 10. We're going to continue to get the absolute value by itself, so we divide each side by 5, and we get x minus 1, the absolute value of it, is less than 2. At this point, we write the two inequalities. One, where it's x minus 1 is less than 2. The other one is x minus 1 is greater than -2. Once again, we're changing the value, so we change the sign. We have to decide if this is and or. When we're looking at this, we read it less than. So that means it's an and statement. We're going to add the 1 on both sides. And we get x is less than 3. Add the 1. And we get x is greater than -1. So on our number line, we have -1. We have 3. The least always goes first. Now with the -1, whenever it's an and statement, the line is going to go in the middle. So we have two open circles because there's no line underneath. And since it's an and statement, it's going to go in the middle. Writing our interval notation is really easy with an and statement because it starts with -1 and it ends at 3. Because these are open circles, we have parentheses, not brackets. Now, looking at letter B, we're going to go through the same process. We're first getting the absolute value by itself by subtracting the -10. Then we divide it by -3, and we get the absolute value of 4x minus 2 is less than or equal to 4. Notice I changed the inequality because I divided by a negative. Now I'm going to write the two inequalities. The first one is 4x minus 2 is less than or equal to 4. The other one is 4x minus 2 is greater than or equal to -4. Now we have to decide if this is an and or an or. We read it. This is less than. So we know it's an and statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 2 to start us off. And I get 4x is less than or equal to 6. I add the 2 on the other side. 4x is greater than or equal to negative 2. Now, I divide each side by 4, and I get x is less than or equal to, the 6/4 reduces to 3/2, and the negative 2/4 reduces to negative 1/2. When I am drawing the number line, I have to remember that my least value goes first and my greatest value goes second. In this case right here, we have two closed circles. Oops, I didn't do a good job following the line underneath. And then since it's an and statement, it's in between. Now, because I have two closed circles, I'm working with brackets because it actually includes the number, and I have negative 1/2 and 3/2. Now, looking at letter C, the process is going to be the same. We're going to add the 4, and we have 2x plus 7 is greater than or equal to 6. We divide it by 2, and x plus 7 is greater than or equal to 3. Now, we're going to write our two equations. The first one is x plus 7 is greater than or equal to 3. The other one is x plus 7, and we change it because we're changing the value. Now, when we read this, this is greater, so it's an or statement. When we solve it, we subtract the 7 and subtract the 7. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put it on a number line. When we write it on a number line, our least value goes first, our greatest value goes second. Because it's an or statement, what we're going to do is we're going to have the lines going outside with the or statement. Now, we have filled in circles because it's equal to, so we're including the numbers. Now, if you weren't sure why is going outside, if you look at the inequality, x is less than negative 10. That's less than is going to the left. X is greater than or equal to negative 4. It's going to the right. Now, interval notation is a little bit more difficult because we have to do it for two lines, not just one. The first one is going to negative infinity, and the second one is going to infinity. Now, looking at our last one, our first step is we're going to subtract the 8. Then we're going to divide it by negative 4. And we get 5x minus 3 is greater than 3. Now, remember, when we divide by a negative, we flip the inequality. Now we're going to write our two inequalities, one where 5x minus 3 is greater than 3. The other one is 5x minus 3 is less than negative 3. We have to decide if this is an and or an or. This right here is greater, so we know it's an or statement. We're going to solve this by adding the 3, dividing by 5. And on the same side, we do the same thing. We add the 3, trying to get the x by itself, and we divide it by 5. Now, when we graph this on the number line, we put our least value first, we put our greatest value second. What we're going to do is we're going to put two open circles because there's no line underneath. And or statements are going to go in the opposite direction. So that means when we do our interval, The first one is negative infinity to 0. Notice it's parentheses. And the other one is 6/5 to infinity.